Hello and welcome to Kingsbridge Health Style, the health and wellbeing podcast from the Kingsbridge Healthcare Group. My name is Avril Keys, your host, and I will be putting real patient questions to our consultant specialists from across the group. From diagnostics through to treatment, we will give you the lowdown on what to look out for and when and how you should make an appointment. Thank you to everyone who has sent through their questions. If you do have a question or would like to find out more about any of our services, contact details will be listed within the information box below. So let's get started, and I hope you enjoy listening. Our guest today is Dr. Kerry Sweeney. Kerry, you're very welcome to the podcast.
Avril,
Can you tell me a little bit about your role, what it is that you do?
Yeah, sure. So I am a consultant clinical psychologist, child psychologist. So I've really just joined Kingsbridge. I left the NHS after 20 years and I've started sessions in Kingsbridge since about October time, as well as some court work and training as well outside of Kingsbridge. So,
and what does a typical day look like for you in Kingsbridge?
In Kingsbridge, well, the wonderful thing is it's very, very varied, so it could be, 1 hour could be providing a consultation about a very young child, the next hour could be working with an older adolescent. I suppose my initial appointments would always involve the parents, because I need to do a very good kind of developmental history and really find out about all the factors, that are impacting on the child or young person. So if it's an older young person, then they would come also to the appointment, but I always spend time with the parents alone just to try to, I suppose, ascertain what the needs are.
And so what kinds of issues are the children presenting with, or the parents?
Yes, so quite a lot of anxiety, and I guess I expected that, really coming out of COVID. Without a doubt, there's definitely higher levels of anxiety, with parents as well as children. I guess low mood sometimes connected to the anxiety. There would be some children then are coming with maybe a need for an ADHD assessment. There are some children who, would be maybe presenting on the autistic spectrum disorder, but that's something Kingsbridge don't provide at this stage, but I'm able to, I suppose, do a screening assessment and then signpost out.
Okay.
A real range, mild to moderate mental health difficulties, because clearly if there is there's more of a concern, then CAM services need to be involved.
Okay.
You need the multidisciplinary, psychiatry and social work and nursing and psychology. But I would provide, I guess if they're perhaps waiting for a CAMS assessment, or indeed it's not at that threshold, I can provide a service for those children.
Okay. And I was going to ask about COVID. So have you seen what you see coming through your doors change post-COVID? Well,
I suppose I started in Kingsbridge during COVID. So the previous job I was in for 14 years was I managed a service in the health service for looked after and adopted children, therapeutic services, which I loved, and met, so many wonderful children and young people, who despite early childhood adversity, were doing so well. Without a doubt, COVID had an additional impact on all of us and children, and I, really do see certainly higher levels of anxiety. But as I say, because I've only been with Kingsbridge for 6 months, it's hard to tell, I wasn't working with them pre-COVID.
So what does a clinical pathway then look like for a patient that comes to you? Is it a multiple appointment scenario, or what way does it work? You mentioned about meeting the parents first.
Yes, so that would be the initial consultation, and I can usually see families fairly quickly. And like I say, ideally both parents and a really good, I suppose child development history, but also a family history. So I do have to ask, pretty tricky questions to parents as well about their relationship, about, any particular traumas within the family, then the extended family, parental mental health difficulties as well. Because as I explained to them, it's like a jigsaw. So the jigsaw in terms of what I can do to help, but before I get there, I need to put those pieces together and do a really thorough history. And I think I'm lucky in the role that I've had in the health service for a long time, which has been working with quite complex needs. So I'm able to provide a really thorough history, and then from that point then help to decide what the next stages are. And then that varies. So an ADHD assessment on its own would be a shorter piece of work. A child presenting with mild to moderate anxiety may need 5 to 6 to 7 appointments. I suppose what is important is the parents are involved, no matter what it is, and even if it is an older adolescent, if that child is living at home with their parents, which they generally are, I would meet with the parents at least for part of the session, sometimes parent-only sessions as well, so that they are providing good care, good, emotional care to their children. They're thinking, about the environment that the child's in. They're thinking about the extracurricular activities that children can be involved in, because clearly what I do is only a snapshot in their lives.
Yes.
So it's that holistic, systemic, I suppose, approach that I'm coming with.
Yes, so it will obviously vary depending on what's presenting to you.
Absolutely.
But it would be typically a series of appointments.
Yes.
With parents, with both and with the child as well.
That's right.
Yeah.
Or, as I say, the therapeutic appointments, then part of the appointment would be with the child, then bringing the parent in, so that they're very aware of what it is that we're discussing, and then they can really support their child
and
back
what
at
kind
home.
of age group then?
Well, at this stage, I suppose the direct work with children, you're probably talking kind of middle childhood and upwards.
Okay.
I have a couple of younger children on my caseload at the minute, and I do all that work with the parent in the room. But for a child maybe 7, 8, 9 upwards, then, you would be looking at that kind of appointment where the child's in for a period of time, but then the parents, and if it's a teenager, the teenager's in on their own for a longer period of time, if that makes sense, and the parent, coming in. Because it's important that teenagers especially know that the space is confidential. They know, I always explain the clauses around that, so that they can use the time effectively with me, but also bring mum or dad in to support them, as I say, whenever they're going home.
Yeah, of course. And we've had some questions. You talk about that assessment piece, obviously because of waiting lists currently.
Yes.
There's a number of people have contacted me in terms of getting that initial assessment. Can they come to you for that sort of assessment piece to bring back to the Education Authority for their child to get the support that they need within the school?
Yes, so ADHD assessments, yes, absolutely. And then we have paediatricians within the group. So sometimes actually they refer to me, but again, vice versa. Then if I've done the assessment then and they need to maybe consider medication, because, I'm not a medical doctor, so that needs to be done through paediatrics or indeed psychiatry, but that would be done outside the group at this stage.
Okay.
So yes, yes, ADHD assessment. The autism or autistic spectrum disorder assessment, it really requires a multidisciplinary assessment, speech and language. So that at this stage isn't something that Kingsbridge do, but I think that is a gap, and is something that we've raised in terms of needing to look at a clinic like that.
Yes,
within
because
Kingsbridge.
of obviously
there's
the
a big
lists.
demand, absolutely huge waiting lists.
Yeah.
But through my work, sometimes I guess parents maybe come with a more general inquiry, and I would pick up that an ASD assessment's warranted. So then I would provide guidance around some services they can perhaps signpost on, essentially.
So you could come with a more general,
Absolutely.
I'm just not sure.
Absolutely. I think that's probably where my strengths are, because I've had a wide range of experience, but right across, I suppose, the spectrum, but also the complexity of children with childhood trauma. So I'm able to, I suppose, screen and rule out a lot of other issues and be probably, I hope, very clear. Look, this is warranted, or this is what I can provide you with, but this is what is outside my area, because I am working on my own, essentially. I don't have a team with me. The way CAMHS would have, or
Yes, because I'm thinking probably parents would be reluctant, maybe, unless there was something really a major issue that was maybe impacting school or whatever. And I guess so. Is it something you would recommend to a parent to say, if you've any concerns, even if they're low level concerns, it is worth having that session?
Absolutely, to reassure them or to see what else they should or could be doing. Coming with that expertise, I think, to support them in thinking, signposting if needed, but also what it is I can help them with as well.
I'm just thinking of preempting potentially as well, something escalating or becoming worse.
Absolutely. And we know that all the health services are very stretched, and CAMHS thresholds, they're doing their very best with really, low resources. So, that's some, I suppose I can provide support even while they're potentially waiting for CAMHS assessment, or CAMHS appointments, and hopefully provide good support, to reduce the needs and the difficulties before they would go to CAMHS.
So, Kerry, just wanted to talk about the different treatments then. And reading on your profile, and do you mind, I'll read this off the page problem, because there was a few words I wasn't familiar with. But
yes, I know.
You talked about, is it dyadic, developmental, psychotherapy.
Well done,
And
well done.
You're a practitioner.
DDP, yeah. So as far as I know, I'm only one of 3 in Ireland who's certified. There's different levels to this training, but it's I suppose, a therapeutic model that I've embraced right at the beginning of my career. And it started out, it's a guy called Dan Hughes in America, and really working with children who've experienced developmental trauma. So the work that I've worked in the health service for 20 years, but it's so applicable for families, for parenting. So I have provided this extensively, I suppose, for looked after children and adopted children. And I suppose, one of the gaps I feel that I want to bring to Kingsbridge actually is bringing this model, for adopted children. So I've made some links with adoption agencies in Northern Ireland, and they are aware that I'm providing this independently now, and we have a couple of pathways set up to begin this. But it would be, I suppose, intrinsic to all the work that I do with parents is the DDP, because the P can be parenting as well as psychotherapy. So it's there's a particular, I suppose, model within that called PACE. So I can talk a wee bit about that now. So it's like a paceful attitude or parenting. So P stands for playfulness, A for acceptance, C for curiosity, and E for empathy. So I would, at the core of all the work that I do, I'd be talking to parents about this type of paceful parenting attitude. And I suppose if you think about playfulness, it is so core to children and how we interact. And I have 2 teenagers at home. Being playful is so very important. It can just crack that smile when, even the most hostile of teenagers. The A, acceptance, then, is, I suppose, accepting the child's, inner emotional world, and that children are going to have a range of feelings about things, and not always trying to fix things immediately, to accept, they are going to feel angry about things, sad about things, upset about things. It's not always about waving a magic wand and making it better. It's sitting with those difficult feelings that children have. Curiosity, then, and that's an interesting one, because I think a lot of us ask very direct questions to children, what is wrong, rather than, I am wondering, and that kind of wondering out loud, and a parent co-constructing like a story or a narrative for them about what could be impacting on them is really powerful. And then E, obviously, is empathy, really feeling for the child, and so that type of a paceful attitude, parenting attitude, I think is so core. Yeah. So, I've taken that from years of experience into more general work that I'm doing now in Kingsbridge. Okay. So it's a lovely, lovely model. And then the actual psychotherapy is within a room so it's a family therapy model, essentially. Mm-hmm. So with a child and parents, and there's different elements to it, but it's a wonderful model. It was a real kind of game changer for me in my career. Okay. There's other models I use, like EMDR and CBT, but this is really core to the work that it would be at the basis of everything that I do. And
have you seen that? Because I know people like to hear about cases where that's really worked well.
Yes.
Have you any examples you can share?
Yeah, I've used it extensively and with looked after children, and with their foster carers, and wonderful results and wonderful connections. It's about really building the attachment connection and helping, I suppose, explore difficulties. And for those children, there would be, quite extensive trauma. So absolutely, it's been a really wonderful model to use. And then I would do some training in and around the model as well. So that would be core. But like I say, absolutely CBT and a whole range. And I suppose I always start with, the emotional regulation, the need for emotional regulation, and self-care and well-being, and looking very widely. So like a real bottom-up, approach, like thinking about a pyramid or a triangle. So a lot of support for parents and for children around, well, what is it you're doing day to day? Parents need self-care plans, children need self-care plans. Yeah. And, so really exploring that and looking at day-to-day emotionally regulating and physically regulating activities for children, children who are and indeed adults, who are, who are very static and not moving around. We need that physical movement,
And I'll come to that in the end, because I'm going to get you to give some of those kinds of tips and hints for.
So it's
but in terms,
really
so is there, you talk about a lot, some of this, it strikes me, is treating the parents. as much
because
as
the parents
children,
are
so
core. You know, we would just never, child psychologists would not be bringing children into a room and working with them entirely without, you know, that connection with parents, because they are, you know, so responsible, I guess. You know, there's always multiple factors involved in, you know, why children and indeed adults present as they do. So they are part of that, but they're also a big part of the solutions as well, and the support. So,
I'm sure they get
key.
a lot from the process.
Yes,
as well.
absolutely, absolutely, and just reassurance. But also, you know, parents have had their own experiences as well. So it's going about that in a really supportive, empathic way.
Yes,
It's never ever about blaming anybody. It's about, you know, trying to look, like I say, at the piece of the jigsaw, and you know what we can do then to try to move things along a wee bit.
Yeah.
You know,
And that pace thing will stay with me now. I'm thinking.
Yeah,
when I go
it's
home
lovely.
To
I mean, it's I suppose it's a real, just to me, it's just a cornerstone of good parenting. You know, and yeah.
Absolutely. Just coming to a couple of questions that we've had. You know, any practical hints or tips to help a child who's very shy and socially anxious?
Yeah, so again, like I say, I would be starting, you know, with the bottom-up approach. So I'd be looking day to day at, you know, what I suppose what level of anxiety that child has first of all, you know, and really looking at a self-care plan for that child. So what, and I think, you know, around that, it doesn't even need to be outside of the house, around the house, environmentally, you know, even the child's bedroom. What does that feel like, look like, you know, all those senses. You know, and then the overall household, the garden, you know, really thinking about what that child needs on a day-to-day basis to help to regulate them, because, you know, anxiety is felt and held in the body, so we need body-based approaches to help emotionally, if that makes sense. So really looking at all of that, and then I guess just, you know, certainly never ever thrusting children into situations that they feel uncomfortable with. You know, really slow, gradual processes, you know, and potentially agreeing with the child what they feel comfortable to do, and then I suppose trying that out, and then I suppose seeing how the child feels as a result of that. And I talk about, you know, almost building up for children like a bank of evidence that they can do something, you know. So again, if this is just at home rather than coming in to see me, encouraging parents to, you know, maybe the child asks for something at a shop, you know, and the parent supports them with that, and then when they come home they can have a discussion about that and how the child felt, and, you know, those types of things. But supporting the child to be as emotionally regulated as possible before they do that, you know. So thinking about the big, you know, the tummy breathing. There's lots of YouTube clips and apps out there about, you know, the kind of you know, child mindfulness, and you know, the you know, deep belly breathing and all of those things, and visualization and relaxation. So all of those pieces to go in to help regulate the child before they make those steps potentially to ask for something in a shop or try a new group or whatever it might be.
And that's come through because a couple of questions about online resources and what is useful for people.
There's a range of very good, actually, YouTube clips. I would use quite a lot for training. You know, and many more apps now, you know, for children as well, you know, and again, and I mean, I suppose what's applicable for parents around mindfulness and yoga and all of these things is just as applicable for children, you know, and there's lots out there that would be specifically for children.
Yes.
So you know, encouraging parents to think from that perspective, what do I need to do day to day to help regulate my child? This is not about them going to a therapy session once a fortnight and this is going to resolve everything. Not at all, you know. It's about and thinking, you know, again, really, I suppose, basic things, but, you know, getting outdoors as much as possible, you know, the physically regulating activities, you know, climbing, crawling, you know, going to parks as often as possible, digging in the sand, digging in the garden, you know, forests, all of those, those, although it sounds so obvious, are so important for emotional
But we probably all feel
regulation.
too busy to do. You know,
we can, you know, and I suppose post-COVID, people are, you know, getting back potentially into that loop, but being very mindful of the need for all of those sensory experiences for children to help emotionally and physically regulate them, you know.
And what about kids and technology then? You know, what are your views on it?
I know I have to say I have 3 kids myself, 2 teenagers, and I mean, I guess we have to just go with the, you know, with how things are, but you know, it is about just monitoring that, and certainly children who are sitting static, you know, constantly on phones or Xboxes, you know, it's not it's not healthy for them. So isn't it about, I suppose, modulating that and making sure there's a bit, but then there's something else that involves a bit more movement and regulation and engagement.
Yes.
I think that's, because they're not getting the same engagement, and we know that face-to-face connection, and what happens around our attachment and our development and our relationships and emotionally comes from that human connection.
Yes.
So parents need to be very mindful of that and do all they can, as I say, to ring fence that time that children are going to want, but have plenty of time to connect and play.
And offset that online time.
Yeah.
And I suppose, and I always like to finish with the kind of practical, I suppose, ideas and ways that we as parents can improve and help our children's mental health. So I suppose we've touched on them a little bit, but would you kind of outline your sort of top 3 or top 5 things?
Yes. So I mean, without a doubt, that the piece that I've talked about emotional and physical regulation, that is key. Before, because the brain is structured in a certain way, and the thinking parts, the cognitive parts are just right up at the top, but we need to be, so the kind of emotional bits and the sensory bits are lower down. So we have got to be thinking, from a very early age, because there's a huge amount of brain development happens in the first 3 years, but lots and lots all the way through, and then another surge actually in the adolescent years, which helps us make sense of why teenagers can be very emotional, because there's a bit to happen towards adolescence that helps, I suppose, those pathways develop so they can regulate their emotions better. So look, as much, and it's not about being outdoors and activity based all of the time, because it's almost like a rhythmic pattern. Children do need downtime, and they, nurturing bedtime activities, for any age group is really important, and that calm time, and I suppose that's why the home environment and providing opportunities for calm, connected, regulating time, with parents as well is important. But like I say, out and about, lots of activity and regulation, and all the different ways I've said. That PACE model, I love it, and I wouldn't say I practice it all the time myself at all, but I try, and just being kind of aware of that.
And remind me just of the
so
4.
P, playfulness. So that can be actually playing with children, but it can also just be that kind of playful, fun attitude. And we know that can really break the ice, and you can crack a smile from an adolescent, maybe by being playful. The acceptance, and that acceptance part is really important. Like I say, it's not about rushing to solutions. And I think that we as parents, we want to take the pain away for a child. So we're looking to, let's come up with an idea that's going to make you feel better right now. Sometimes it's so absolutely okay that children feel these range of emotions, and that we go with that, and we sit alongside them. We're there for them, but we're not coming up with solutions immediately. But we're being curious then, which is the C. We're wondering out loud, and avoid those direct questions. Many children do know what's wrong, but some just don't. So if you ask them just outright, well, what's up with you? What's wrong? It just doesn't hit the mark or hit the spot. So being curious, wondering about, maybe something that's happened in school or a friendship group, or something that's happened a month or so ago that's maybe, been triggered again. Just wondering out loud about that and trying to co-construct that with the child is very powerful, and it's, and then, using lots of empathy for that. So that's just think a wonderful parenting model, And
have you any examples of good, curious questions to ask teenagers in particular? Because I have tried to do this with my teenagers, and I've done the, what made you feel happy today? And they all roll their eyes and go, Mum's been reading something on the internet again.
Stop me doing that. You can imagine my kids, we're not your clients.
You're not.
But look, I mean, one of the most powerful ways I think of saying this is just, I was thinking, I was wondering. And that you put, it's less of a question, I guess. It's more of you kind of meander your way through. So a child, say, presents in the morning really, really grumpy, and maybe the night before there's been a fallout in social media or something like that. So it's maybe something along the lines of, oh my goodness, I can see you're full of, you're feeling really fed up today, and I'm kind of thinking maybe this is connected to what happened last night. Could be wrong, I'm here, here to think it through with you, because that was really hard, So something like that, and you just meander your way through it. You could still get that, you know. Don't tell me that, or don't talk to me in that way. But
and one final thing that just came through what you were talking about there, the sleep, the importance of sleep.
Very, yes, yeah, absolutely.
You know, so I suppose it's.
And thinking then about that bedtime routine is really important, you know. So again, whenever my initial point of contact with parents would be, right, well, what does that bedtime look like? What does the evening look like? But that, like I said, you're going right the way back. Often children need straight after school, not necessarily straight home to do homeworks, but some kind of after school activity, or if not to the park, or if not out to the garden or something, to kind of just bring them down, maybe to the point that they're ready to do homework. But then it's what does the evening look like, and certainly lots and lots of time on phones or Xboxes to go straight to bed is not going to be good for them. So then it's thinking about, well, what's that bedtime, bath time activity like, you know, and lots of nurture and dim lights and warm, you know, warm water, warm towels, warm PJs, maybe a wee hot chocolate, you know, something, you know, so really thinking, you know, and the lights in the room, all of those things, thinking from a sensory perspective is really, really important, you know, just to try to kind of get the child ready and prepared and relaxed and regulated and ready for sleep.
And again, it occurs to me that this is perfect advice for all of us grown-ups as well.
Absolutely.
That sounds
it's
really...
What applies, well, we're all human beings. It's really, really applicable to be there. And we do, and like I say, when I work with parents, it's about, well, what do you do to take care of yourself? Because you're the one taking care of the child, so you need to be as, you know, calm and regulated and mindful of your own self-care as possible.
Yes, and I've seen references to that over COVID, you know, where children see you know, showing yourself that self-care and also see you resting and see you sleeping, and it's all of that.
Modelling and it's about then that kind of genuine sense of a parent feeling good and you know, well equipped to that. I always talk about buckets, and the kids I work with laugh at this. You know, we all have stress buckets. So and everything that we experience right the way, actually whenever we're in utero, right the way through, everything goes in there. But we need to continue to tip that out by, you know, taking care of ourselves, you know, self-care, working out, well, what helps to keep us much more regulated, you know. So if a parent's stress bucket's really full, you know, then, and the child's struggling, you can see how there's going to be conflict. So it is really very much about, well, what do parents need to be mindful of to help to de-stress, to tip a bit out of the bucket so that they're more available to support their child. You know,
my kids call me a stress bucket, so that's probably not a good thing.
We're all guilty of having very full buckets, absolutely. So we need to tip them out, definitely.
Well, I have certainly taken so much from this podcast, Carrie. Thank you so much. And I am going home and writing down my PACE. Thank you for your time today. I really appreciate you coming in.
No problem. Thanks very much.